Not right away. They will though. Once I get the first liquor company to sponsor the show.
I got a few of those in my pocket. So
There you go. See, it's all it takes, and then sky's the limit. Sucio talk. Sobre masa tortilleria up in this bitch. Hanging on my main man Tyson. Oh, Tyson, you sell me meat.
Yes, I do.
It's a restaurant. You sell a lot of people meat.
Yes, I am. I am the shiller, or at least I like to tell everybody, I am the trafficker of dead body parts. That's what I do for a living.
Okay.
The FBI are still looking out for me, but they'll never find us in this warehouse here.
Right. So, how long you been in the meat game?
So I've been in the meat business like professionally for like the last 5 years, largely coming as a result of the COVID.
Seriously?
Pandemic.
Okay.
So before that, I actually ran a restaurant. Was working in restaurants, being a consultant, being a chef, being in all these other different places.
Yeah.
But after the the pandemic decided to send my restaurants to the annals of history.
Yeah.
I had to go find another mission in life, and my mission in life now is to more or less get as many dead body parts into as many restaurants as possible.
Okay, that's legit. I feel like a chef always feels better buying from a former chef.
Well, you would be surprised because, like, there's a lot of ego involved when it comes to like chefs going into this industry, because in the purveyorship industry, Baldor and Chef's Warehouse and Cisco and all those guys, there's lots of folks who have worked in the restaurant industry, got burned out, said like, all right, what's next? How do I get a paycheck?
Yeah.
How do I pay the bills? It's like, well, I got some friends. I could sell them some ketchup. I could, I could try to work that angle.
Yeah.
But what tends to be lacking is that, like, you basically step into the dark side, right? I am the annoying guy who has to bother you while you're dealing with all this other stuff. You got payroll, you got the walk-in has crashed, your dishwasher has called out sick, and now here I am asking you to buy some chicken. So there's no matter what your history is, we are still kind of the annoying part of your day. Now, where we as purveyors kind of separate ourselves is the fact that we have a specialization and we happen to like what we do, right? So as passionate as somebody at one of the broadliners are about what they do, there's only so much enthusiasm that you could really muster about pitching ketchup. Right?
Yeah.
I got a sale on Fermanos for like an extra 20 cents off or whatnot. It's not really getting you up in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas, where I focus on is specifically meat, and specifically meat for fine dining. So whereas, I do provide some proteins to places like diners and burger joints and whatnot. Most of my roster of clientele are the who's who of the Michelin star industry.
Okay, right? Can you share some restaurants or what?
Well,
or is
it's
underground.
As proud as I am of who I sell to, and we could talk about them offline.
Yeah, for sure.
But a lot of chefs do use me as kind of a secret weapon to be passed around.
That's funny.
In fact, the funny thing is a lot of my business are referrals, and the referral usually comes in this conversation. Some French guy decides that he wants a lamb tripe, right?
Right.
And you call the usual suspects. You call your guy at D'Artagnan, you call your guy at U.S. Foods, you call whoever, and quite frankly, no one's paying you the time of day, right? And so all these guys at the top 1% of the New York dining scene, they're all friends. They all drink together. They all talk together, and they all bitch about like, hey, I've been calling everybody. I've been trying to get some lamb tripe. no one's helping me out. I was like, all right, I got a guy, right? And so that's how.
You're the guy. You're the wolf.
Right. So I'm
Okay.
I'm the person who will get you the fairly exotic stuff, right? But simultaneously, the bulk of what I do are things that only higher dining restaurants focus on, right? Dry aged meat, prime beef, and I specifically have a specialization in portioned A5 Wagyu.
Okay.
Which, again, you could buy A5 Wagyu from anyone, but their selections are limited. Whereas, like, I can get you portion products.
Yeah.
I could make portion zabutons from A5 straight off the boat from Japan at a snap of a finger, right? So people need folks like me in order to make, an interesting menu.
Yeah, for sure. And so are these relationships forged over time? Because you started 5 years ago, right? So is that when these meat relationships started? Did you go to Japan and like get in their faces and get these?
No, a lot of again, as purveyors, we're not the importers. So there's the importers who specifically will go to the auctions in Japan.
Yeah.
Who will, buy the entire cow and then get them here on these shores. But a lot of these guys are not really looking to deal with restaurants. Like you'll find that a lot of the big wholesalers that deal with like whole animals, like whole veal, whole lamb, A5 Wagyu and whatnot, they really don't want to deal with restaurants. So for the very simple fact that restaurants don't buy a lot.
Yeah.
And restaurants don't pay their bills very consistently, right?
Okay.
And so what they do is they prefer dealing with people like me who will buy pallets of product and have a checkbook ready. Right.
Yeah.
And so then people like me will then deal with the restaurants because, like, we know what restaurants need. B, we kind of have a little bit more of a stomach for risk.
Yeah.
Because obviously we're in the meat business. We're not the vegetable guy. We're not the bread guy. You screw over the bread guy for like 5-6 invoices. He's down $1,000. You screw me over for five invoices, I'm down about like 40-50 grand.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a very high wire act business, being a meat purveyor.
For sure. And then you're also dry aging. So about how much overhead is just drying in your fridges over time? Like you said, you could be screwed over on 5 invoices. So one chef could say, hey, age my meat for 2 months and then be like, my restaurant's closed.
Right. So just as long as it's in our inventory, then it's fairly easy for us to find a home for it.
Okay. Okay.
Part of my job and my responsibility is to basically find a home for any and all weird products that people have us bring in. So one of the most hilarious products that I had a lot of difficulty getting rid of is somebody brought in some long bone pork shoulders, which I had no idea what a long bone pork shoulder is.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's basically the pernil with the shank still attached.
Okay.
And the reason we were stuck with it was the guy got fired. And not to be mean about it, but if you're the chef ordering a long bone pork shoulder, I'm sorry, you should be fired. Right? Some people just kind of try too hard.
Yeah. I hear you.
Everything between like venison ossobuco all sun-dry esoterica that people ask us to do.
But you'll do it.
Oh, we'll do it. I mean, look, just as long, because like at the end of the day, we're here to make dreams come true.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Like,
I was just gonna say that.
Like like as a chef, the most difficult part of your job is to answer the fundamental question: why the fuck should I pay attention to you?
Right.
There are a few 100,000 restaurants in New York City, a few 100,000 chefs, all of them trained at the highest levels in the world, right?
Yeah.
You're asking me to sit down and plop down $250 for a prix-fixe dinner.
Yeah.
Why should I do that? Why should I give a flying fuck about what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
Right? Well, and the reason they're going to put down that money, and the reason they're not just simply going to go with what is a guaranteed good time, right? And a guaranteed good time are the basics, right? Like you go to Peter Luger's, you go to Keen's, you go to a steakhouse, you know exactly what you're going to get. There's no creativity, there's no surprises. you're going to have a good time, guaranteed.
Okay.
But, for the people that I serve, the people who are asking for fairly large amount of money for arguably very tiny portions, they need to be able to supply you with something different. You, the diner who are sitting down, you need to be given something to justify this fairly enormous price tag that you're paying, right? And so that's where all of our relationships are intertwined.
Well, that's why I've always thought that restaurants that have their own farms are just a cut above the rest because it's their own land, which is different from any carrot you can get from Baldor. There's 50 restaurants right now with the same fucking carrots.
Right.
What is to make one better than the other?
Well, that's the funny thing with having your own products and having your own farm and whatnot. If for anyone who really spends a lot of time in farming or dealing with agriculture and whatnot, the first thing you discover is Mother Nature is a bitch.
Yeah.
Right. Like part of my headaches every single week is the thing I hate to sell the most of any product whatsoever are ribs. Right. And the reason I hate selling ribs is because, it comes from an animal, right? Animals are short, they're fat, they're tall, they're skinny, they're long, and the ribs will never, ever be completely consistent, right? And I get shit for it. And I'm like, well, I don't raise the cow or the pig
you
or
also
whatever.
didn't birth it.
I didn't deal with it, whatever. But not for nothing, it's an animal, right? It's animal, you're dealing with Mother Nature, and as much control as we would like to exercise through husbandry and farming practice and so whatnot, you're still dealing with genetics. You're still dealing with Mother Nature, and so I kind of feel like the restaurants that have their own farms and deal with their own agriculture, at least maybe they have a better understanding that hey, listen, that carrot you're getting is not going to be uniform. It might be a little dry. It might be a little wet. Right. It might be a little just all over the place. And then, at that point, as a chef, you understand that figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The ball's in your court. You own the goddamn carrot. So you can't send it back. You can't bitch to the rep. You can't ask for credit, right? You own the fucking carrot. So braise it a little longer, roast it a little longer, add some moisture, whatever you need to do, make it work.
Right. I get it. That's a good point. Never really thought about it that way. Well, Tyson, I'll tell you what. On this show, we take it all the way back. Where were you born?
Oh, I was born in Hong Kong, which doesn't mean much because my parents were U.S. citizens and I was back in the United States 2 months later.
Okay.
So I was a fetus
Okay.
for most of my in the United States. Ended up being birthed in Hong Kong and then ended up back here.
Okay, got it. And so what'd your parents do?
So my father was a wholesale jeweler, so kind of similar to what I do, except, a little shinier, a little less bloody. And my mother worked in nursing homes.
Okay, got you. What made the move back and forth for them? Just going to Hong Kong, come back?
It's a fairly convoluted story. My parents are fairly convoluted folks. So.
Yeah. Hey, it happens. It's an old generation, They had to deal with a lot of change.
Yep.
Sure, it's crazy for them living in this day and age.
Well, as the first, being immigrants to this country and trying to more or less figure it out, it's a lot of what we have to deal with in terms of immigration and migration into this country. Now it's slightly different. Back then, there's a lot less rules and there's a lot less opportunities and there's a lot less things for people to fall back on. So, more or less people were just kind of winging it, making it up as they go.
Yeah.
And, again, back to the basics, figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. And so when you're young, what are you interested in? What are you doing?
So ever since I was a kid, there was two things that I wanted to do, which is to accomplish at least. Number one is that I don't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to school I figured I wasn't a very good student.
Okay.
And number two, I wanted to figure out what kind of job I could do that didn't require me going to school. And part of my drawing was into the restaurants. Right?
Okay.
Like every time we go to a restaurant, I always want to peek behind the door. Right. You see the little diamond-shaped window on the door, and I wanted to peek in. And I see flames. I see people dressed in white. I see them just rhythmically like sauteing stuff, stir-frying stuff, tossing things in the air. And to me, that was amazing.
Okay.
Right? There was they all had a drive. They all like had a rhythm to it. And so I was drawn into the restaurant industry very young in life. And so I figured, well, here, this kills two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to go to college to be a chef, right? And I like being in kitchens.
Okay. And so what was your first job?
My first job was actually at Chanterelle in New York City, which at that point was a 3-star restaurant in New York City.
Fuck.
They
What a start.
there was a program called City as School, and I believe that program's still around. I'm not sure what the setup is these days, but basically they went to all the kids who did pretty well in school, and you basically had enough credits that you more or less could fuck off for the second half of your senior year.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, hey, listen, you could be bored for the rest of the year, or we could put you in an internship. You tell us what internship you want to be in. So a good friend of mine wanted to be in comics, and so he got the setup of a lifetime. He got to be an intern at Marvel Comics.
Oh, wow. Holy fuck.
I told them I wanted to be a chef, and they're like, all right, well, we'll set you up in a restaurant.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm a kid from Queens. I don't know shit about fine dining, right? I thought, I didn't really grow up being in a Chinese family, eating with a knife and fork. And so from my point of view, I mean, just as long as you got a knife and fork on the table, we're doing pretty fucking good, right? So I didn't have the context and an understanding that like there are levels to the game.
Yeah.
Right. That there are the 99%, the people who are serving the general public. The people who are just giving you ask for chicken, they will give you chicken with a sauce that fits the bell curve distribution and satisfies 99% of the population. I did not know much about fine dining because it wasn't really on my purview. I figured anything with a knife and fork was a pinnacle of dining. So I ended up at Chanterelle doing prep work, watching the line cooks and the sous chefs and whatnot do their thing. And hung out there for my senior year of high school.
Okay.
Afterwards, I ended up in a few different other restaurants. I spent some time at Boulay, and I was alive during the period where, information wasn't that readily available for restaurants and food and whatnot. And so, you could read, all the old French cookbooks and all the old Italian cookbooks. They had drawings on it. You really didn't see what you really didn't see what a sauce or a dish really looked like.
Yeah.
Right? You really had no context on how a hollandaise was supposed to look like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost like me handing you a copy of Escoffier and saying like, all right,
go for it.
Knock yourself out. Have a good time. Right. So at that point, I was I was a kid, lots of energy.
Yeah.
And I heard line cooks work long hours, and I'm like, well, I'm down for long hours.
Yeah.
Again, the entire point of not having to go to school.
Yeah.
Well, fuck it. I'm just gonna work long hours. So like I
heard that.
I would work. Most of my jobs were in the evening, obviously.
Yeah.
And I figured, well, logically, since I'm working in the evening, I could always do some more work in the morning. So I would stage at different places to get download as much information as I can.
Okay.
Right. So from places like La Bernardin, La Caravelle, I worked at Paillard Pasterie to do chocolate. And I would work the line in the evening at different places.
Oh, so you were fully immersed. What years was this? What like?
This was around 97 to 2001.
Okay, got you.
So it was there were very, very long hours, and in some cases a lot of language immersion, because I would be stuck. I would be stuck in a lot of French kitchens, and of which the only language being spoken was in French, and also Spanish. So like the only language I took in high school was Spanish, so the only person I got to talk to was the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And whatever French I know now is largely the chef cursing me out.
Yeah, for sure. How was your time at places like Boulay during that time? Like, who were the cooks? Who was the CDC?
I mean, honestly, the only name I could really remember from Boulay is Bill Yosis, who was a pastry chef at that point, and I worked under Kurt Gutenbauer, who was the CDC at that point.
Okay.
And it's been so long ago that like I really couldn't bring up a name or whatnot.
Are they not in the game here in New York anymore?
Well, Kurt still is. He owns the restaurant Walzay, which I believe has a Michelin star.
Oh, all right. Hey, still in the game.
And then then Bill Yosis ended up working in the White House, being the executive pastry chef, making desserts for Barack Obama and other luminaries. So like Boulay really was like well, he recently passed a year or so ago. Boulay really was like kind of that graduate school level of like the future captains of industry now.
Yeah. Did you ever have a restaurant that you wanted to get into and couldn't?
So the funny thing was that I really wanted to get at one point I was working for the Marriott Group at their various properties, Tribeca Grill, Tri Bakery, Layla. I used to make some. I used to do some pastry work inside Montrachet. Yeah. But the one place I really wanted to work, which was the hottest restaurant in New York at the time, which was of course Nobu, right? And so I went to the chef. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm doing all this stuff for the rest of the company. I would love to really sign on to Nobu. And the guy told me, like, well, you would have to start off in prep. And, like, quite frankly, our prep guys are absolute beasts. They could debone a chicken in, like, 30 seconds, right? Yeah. Which, at that point in time sounded pretty impressive. But now as a butcher, I could debone a chicken. Debone a chicken much faster than anyone, any restaurant prep cook. But which later in life now, reflecting on it, it occurred to me, why the fuck does Nobu really give a shit about deboning chicken, right? The sushi's place, right? But like, I mean, that might just be his way of telling me to fuck off. But like, that was that was it back then.
Okay, and then you moved down from there. So, in a resume form, what was the trajectory? So, like by name, just go through them real quick, just so we can catch up.
Well, trajectory, like, so Boulay, La Caravelle, let's see, La Côte Basque. I spent some time at, I can't remember the name. It was some French restaurant of Chef Jean-Yves Schillinger, who since then returned to France. Okay. Now has 2 Michelin stars. And then my final stop in the culinary universe was at Judson Grill under Chef Bill Yosis. Okay. And, I hung out there for a while. We had 3 stars from the New York Times. And, I was, at that point, applying for stages out in France. Okay. So, just cold called a whole bunch of places out in France. Ended up with a chocolate shop, which I'm like, all right, well, that wasn't exactly what I was what I was going for, but close enough. That didn't quite work out. So the other place that accepted me was a 3 Michelin star restaurant, which I can't pronounce. I think it begins with an R. It's out in Burgundy. Figured, great. Went to the French embassy, tried applying for a visa, and it was not a visa.
Okay.
And so at that point, I kind of I was a bit burned out. In general, it's not a good idea to be working from 5 in the morning until 1 a.m. in the evening. It's not. And I was looking at all my friends
at a chocolate shop.
No. Just in general, just
Okay,
like
gotcha.
in my workflow. So I looked at all my friends. They were all going to college, going to parties, getting laid, and here I was just hanging out in restaurants all day. Like this is stupid. I'm going to go to college.
Right.
So ended up in college. Moved down to Texas largely because I was sick and tired of New York City.
Yeah.
Ended up at Texas Tech at Lubbock Christian University and did a dual degree there in linguistics. And while I was in college, discovered that, I'm actually not too terrible at school. I always assumed I was a bad student. Turned out it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Got accepted into a PhD program out at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
Of which I ended up not going, and I had to go find my own way. So, moved out to Tucson just to kind of be a hippie.
Yeah.
Did a bunch of sales at different places. If at one point I had the exact same job as Barack Obama for an organization called Acorn as a community organizer, which I was fundraising for.
There you go.
So did that for a little bit, realized that hey, not-for-profit work is not very profitable. So I moved back to New York, and then figured hey, I'm pretty good at convincing people to give me money.
Yeah.
Why don't I try going into finance? And so interviewed at a bunch of places, and they're like, all right, listen, you're you don't know cock about finance, but you seem like you're a quick study.
Yeah.
Why don't we put you in a research position? So I ended up working at a firm called Dealogic, which is a financial research firm that supplies analytics for investment banks.
Right. What about that time, because you're a cook, essentially, right? And then you move into the classroom, and did you have a trouble adjusting to the office life?
No, I mean not really. So here's the one interesting thing.
Yeah.
When you leave the culinary world and you end up in the real world, right? Because whether you're in a meat plant or in an office or whatnot, the one thing you discover is that the real world is not very disciplined, right? I mean, obviously, we all worked at restaurants with a bunch of bums. People don't show up on time. People show up drunk and whatnot. Yeah. But in general, for a good restaurant, a restaurant of the highest caliber, people don't look at you as a badass for going out and getting drunk. People look at you as a badass if you go out, get completely shit-faced, come in completely hungover, and yet you still bang out brunch like a champion, right? And so there's a work ethic and discipline that only restaurants seem to have. That once you go into any other industry, again, I spend most of my time in meat plants and whatnot. The level of discipline is certainly nowhere near the level of discipline required to be a line cook at the highest level of restaurants.
Okay.
So it's fine. Ended up taking that discipline and taking that work ethic and bringing it to finance. It kind of rose up the ranks.
Right.
Ended up managing a global team of people in Hong Kong, Budapest, here in New York City, and doing some work out in London. And we mainly supplied analytics of structured finance to investment banks. Now, structured finance might seem complicated until you watch the movie. I forgot what the movie was, but it's about the 2008 financial crash.
Okay, yeah.
Largely, that industry was particularly my field of expertise. CDOs, ABSs. We're the bad guys that fucked everything up. So
Okay.
mea culpa. But
Is that true?
yeah, so again, I wasn't selling it. I'm simply doing research on it. But we
Did you see it coming?
we actually, funny thing is, we all saw it coming. We all talked about it.
It's
right?
not just the 4 guys in the fucking movie.
Well, look, so the movie, if you
that was a little racist because they were all white dudes.
Yeah, well, so in the movie, like you kind of see all these guys coming to the conclusion, that like after doing lots and lots of research, after doing all the different studies, thinking that like, hey, all these guys who sell this stuff are completely clueless that this ticking time bomb is about to happen.
Yeah,
that's not true. Everyone knew that this thing was going to collapse eventually.
Yeah,
the idea was that mainly that if it does collapse, it's not going to be that bad, right? And I think even the folks who were shorting these instruments didn't believe that it was going to be that bad. They figured like, hey, the thing's going to implode. It'll hit a certain level, we'll cover our shorts, and we're going to make a whole shit ton of money.
Right.
They didn't expect the whole thing to just completely implode, of then which they just made a boatload of money. Made them all billionaires overnight.
Right.
Well, so after that market imploded, I'm sitting at my desk and not having much to do, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
So
So where does like to a normal person, to a person who doesn't understand money like that, like where the fuck does the money go? Where does it go? What implodes? So
to give an easy way of understanding this, right? A car insurance company needs a certain amount of money in the bank.
Yeah,
right.
To pay out.
The idea is that like, all right, look, there's X amount of cars that we're insuring, X amount of money that we project that we're going to have to pay out because you wrapped your goddamn Honda around a tree, right? And there's a government oversight on that. Like, all right, listen, you're going to write all these policies. You're gonna guarantee that you're going to pay out on if some asshole wraps his car around a tree. Show me the money. Okay, great. You got the money in the bank. We're cool, right? Now, on the collateralized debt obligations, these CDOs, they used to be just repackaged mortgage-backed securities. They're basically bonds that are composed of all the home loans that are extended around the country.
Okay.
What people started to do was they started creating what were called synthetic CDOs. Synthetic CDOs are functionally insurance policies, right? They're basically a insurance policy that like against certain bonds, basically that, okay, listen, if this bond decides to implode, we'll pay out.
Okay,
great. Now, here's the thing. Unlike the auto industry that has a required amount of money to back up every single policy that they're writing, these guys do not, right?
Okay.
They're basically writing policy as out of thin air, because quite frankly, these things never implode, right?
Yeah.
You figure if a car never wraps itself around a tree, well, fuck it. I'll just write as many policies as they can.
Right.
And so these guys just churned out as many policies as to make it technical. These policies were technically called credit default swaps, but they wrote out as many of these policies as humanly possible because it's free money, right? Just as you have to pay an insurance premium every single month.
Yeah.
The guys who bought these policies are paying you a premium every single month. The premium costs you nothing nothing, right? You don't have to stock inventory.
Right,
you don't have to hire staff. You don't have to do shit other than give them a policy and them paying you a premium.
Yeah.
Because you're going to insure this bond that they're insuring against, of which in your mind things never going to implode. I'm cool. I'm just going to enjoy this free money.
Yeah.
So that itself already made things a fairly dicey proposition. Wall Street looked at this and figured, like, well, if a slightly dicey proposition is a good thing, well, a really fucking dicey proposition should be amazing, right? So they started taking a lot of these synthetic CDOs and they started like chopping them up, reformatting them, and calling them CDO squares, right? And so like, all right, so now we're really making a lot of money off things that are really complicated and really dicey. Well, let's so the CDO market kind of looks like the beer brewery market, right? So when the beer brewery market first started up, people started doing IPAs, and they're like, well, hey, you know, something that's slightly hoppy is kind of pleasant, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Add more.
If it's slightly hoppy, it's kind of pleasant. Let's hoppy the shit out of this thing. All right. So
Make them fucking unpleasant.
and so they started making these things called CDO cubed, which is a CDO square.
What the fuck?
All chopped up and made into yet an even more convoluted product, right? With even more dicey propositions in there. Again, you're talking about a lot of policies being written against billions and billions of assets that have no money backing it, right? Mm-hmm. That's almost, it would be akin to you, same thing, as complicated as it might sound. It's a very easy proposition for anyone to understand. Mm-hmm. Like, if you allow someone to write millions and billions of insurance, auto insurance policies without having any money to pay out for these, if everyone decides to wrap their car around a tree, well, you're fucked, right? And all of us who were in the industry kind of saw that. We all talked about it. It's like, well, it's not a matter of if we're going to get fucked. It's a matter of just when we're going to get fucked, right? Now, the thing is, you're making, like, you know, it's like any degenerate gambler. When do you leave the table? When you're on a streak, right? Yeah. You know, are you, you know, if you're on a roll at the craps table, you're up $100,000, right? You're having a good time.
Get up and
now you should say to yourself, like, hey, I have $100,000. I could do fuck all. I could go have myself a nice steak dinner. I could pick up myself like a slightly dicey prostitute, and then have a good, and then call it a night, right? But no, I'm just gonna roll the dice one more time, right? Which then you lose, and then you roll. You're like, okay, that's just a fluke. I'll roll another dice. I'll get it back, you know, and you keep going down, right? And so just like the craps table, as these mortgages started imploding, people were like, well, you know, that's a fluke. That's a fluke. That's a fluke. We're going to keep playing at the craps table, right? Until Morgan's, what's that? Bear Stearns basically announced that they were within hours of shutting down. You know, and then J.P. Morgan came in and bought them for a whopping $2 a share. Oh, wow. Which somebody had the gravitas to then stick a $2 bill on the Bear Stearns door as the employees were all walking into work.
Holy shit!
But you know that was that's basically the financial collapse as part of my existence.
So it happens. You have no work, and then what do you think? What do you do?
Well, so I mean, I wasn't laid off. I just didn't have much to do. The company kept me on. I got transferred to start managing different teams to do research on corporate debt. Basically, you know, part of it required me flying out to Budapest and basically giving crash courses on researchers on how to do like cash flow analysis, how to make a income statement, how to like look at statements of cash flow, and then reconstruct what a debt structure of different corporations look like. Because especially in Europe, their accounting principles are not as stringent as the American GAAP system. And so, like, you know, you look at any Italian company, you know, it's not very clear how much money they owe to everybody. So you really have to spend some time really decoding your financial statements and actually making an accurate picture of things. And so I did that for a while, decided, you know, hey, I'm sick of corporate life. You know, I'm sick of flying to Europe all the time. You know, at that same time, you know, I kind of I went to a you know, my local supermarket. This was a fall. Then they had this tiny ass little baby grill that what they had on clearance. So I'm like, well, fuck it, it's $5. Brought it home, cooked some burgers, and like, this is kind of fun. And so you know, I graduated from that to a bigger grill. And then I got this was around the time that the barbecue market started kind of taking off. And, you know, I was caught up along with everybody else in barbecue mania. Like, you know, it was kind of interesting. A lot of people were getting into barbecue. And, you know, I read about a pitmaster named Ed Mitchell.
Yeah.
Who focused on cooking the entire pig, whole hog barbecue. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. I've never heard of that, right? Like everybody else had the same shit. Everybody else had brisket, ribs, pulled pork and whatnot. What does it mean to cook an entire pig? And so like I started down a rabbit hole studying everything I could about whole hog barbecue. Took many trips out in North Carolina. Eventually met up with Mr. Mitchell himself, and he was more than happy to show me the ropes. So I spent some time with Ed Mitchell and his brother Aubrey Mitchell, and they showed me how to do traditional North Carolina barbecue. And so my idea became, well, we don't have any North Carolina barbecue here in New York,
right?
Especially we don't have whole hog barbecue in New York, and so to do whole hog barbecue requires the burning down of wood into coals, and then taking the entire pig and slowly roasting it overnight until it falls apart. And so I opened up my own barbecue restaurant. And at that point, there was only 9 guys in all of the United States who were still focused on cooking old school whole hog barbecue the same way.
Where was this restaurant?
It was called Arrogant Swine, right here in Bushwick, where it's not very far away from here.
Yeah.
And it caught on pretty quickly because there's nobody else doing it.
Yeah.
A lot of people were interested and tasting it for the first time.
Yeah.
We got featured in basically literally everybody, the Food Network, Cooking Channel, Eater. So a lot of people covered my work.
Yeah.
A lot of Southern food writers started covering my work. So
Southern Food Writers Alliance. Were they up here?
Yeah, so them and it was kind of interesting about having all these guys from down south because they're like, look, I don't quite fit the imagery of what you would figure a Carolina pitmaster to be, right? There's there's 2 strikes against me, right? Number one, I'm from New York, right? That's the single worst thing that could happen to barbecue. You have some guy from New York doing barbecue. The second thing is, well, I'm Chinese, right? Pitmasters are either black or white. You don't get. Yeah, they are most definitely not Asian. We do pad thai, we do pho, we do noodles, right? That's kind of our lane. Stay in your fucking lane. But we did that concept for a while. Yeah. And being out of Bushwick has its own struggles. We were completely a destination restaurant. There's no, we were in the industrial part of Bushwick. We're right across the street from a cement factory.
Right.
No one was coming in unless they were coming in specific to see us. So we were there for about 8 years, and the pandemic happened, and look, it was a struggle. The system that New York has is not really set up for individual restaurants to be able to weather the storm. And most of us who are in individual restaurants are not really set up to be proper businesses. A business in general is very cold and calculating, right? So as much as I love what I do, currently, in terms of selling meat, it is a very simple transaction, right? It's basically you give me money and I give you a case of bacon. It's just that simple, right? Like people who are in meat are not trying to change the world. We're not trying to make our mark in the universe. We're not really trying to serve a local community, right? We love what we do, but fundamentally we're doing it for money. We want to get paid. Yeah. Restaurateurs are built differently, right? A restaurateur, you rarely ever listen to a restaurateur or a chef or anyone in that category saying like, "Hey, I am fucking crushing it," right? I'm eyeballing a Maserati. I'm looking to pick up a new rollie. That's not what they do. You listen to chefs, listen to restaurateurs. They're trying to tell you a story. They're trying to say that there's this part of Americana that is dying. There's a part of a story of their homeland, of their family, of all this that they really, really want to tell. And it's a very heartwarming kind of system, but it's terrible fucking business, right? Like,
Right.
business, a real business is like a cement factory,
Right.
right? How many yards of cement do you fucking want, right? That's a cement
It's
factory.
a feelings
right?
business, restaurants.
Yeah, restaurants really are like an advanced form of altruism, right?
Right.
Like, we're trying to take care of guests. We're trying to make people's lives better. We don't talk about in restaurants. We don't talk that much about P&L aside from making sure that our employees are paid, our
Right.
vendors are paid, our
Right.
rent is being paid. That is.
The owners usually fuck themselves.
Right.
Like,
So I mean, like, look,
literally.
for every single place you see of like some guy who's opening a bakery / bookshop / cat adoption agency,
Yeah.
right? That poor fuck is making less than minimum wage,
Yeah.
right? That guy is working 60 to 80 hours a week, and hoping that everything will work out eventually, right? Versus, say, the guy who's at the cement factory. It's like, all right, how do I get this multi-million-dollar city contract?
Yeah.
Right. Of which then I will, I got this 5,000 square foot like mansion out in Long Island on the Gold Coast that I want to buy. Right. Like one of the places that I sell to right now is actually a luxury condo that has its own restaurant.
Oh, no way.
The cheapest, like dog shit poor apartment in there starts at $8 million. Right?
Yeah.
Like, the people who are in business are the ones who are looking to buy in on that.
I can see that.
Like, you never hear about some guy who's trying to bring in real Oaxacan like cuisine. Talk about that. You never hear about that. You never hear about a guy who is trying to like bring in real Iberian live fire cooking. Talk about that. They talk about history. They talk about culture. They talk about trying to make a mark in the universe and trying to make their little footnote in history before they pass.
Right.
Right. And so that's what makes restaurants interesting. The restaurants are fundamentally terrible businesses, right? And the more soulless it becomes, the better the business is,
Yeah.
right? And so for a lot of where chefs these days kind of have to balance out is that, okay, well, they don't want to really, if they really wanted to just sell their soul to corporate America, they would have easily done that, right?
Right.
Like, but instead they're like, look, I still want to tell stories. I still want to I still want to make a mark in the world.
Yeah.
But I also got bills to pay.
Damn. I mean, do you think that, that point being said, do you think that we are on the cusp of having more clubs and membership style restaurants and things like that?
Well, clubs and members. So
you can have kind of like an overhead, where you're like paying the bills and what's coming in. Costco type shit, because it's like make your money off
like there's a
membership.
lot of these. I don't really know that side of the industry that well. Obviously, we sell to a bunch of places like that.
Yeah.
And people like me particularly love selling to places like that, largely because we know we're going to get paid.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I sell to a country club, I'm fairly confident that the bill is going to get covered because they're not looking at food costs, they're not looking at P&Ls, they're not looking at whatever. They're there to do a job, and I mean, it was kind of stupid from going back in history because when I first applied to Johnson & Wales University, I sat through the orientation for
In Rhode Island?
Yeah, for potential students.
Harborside, baby.
They were like, hey, look, we got all these alumni working at country clubs, cruise ships.
Yeah, they really
and
try to
whatever.
sell that shit.
And me being the stupid kid from Queens, I was thinking like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to work for a country club. And now, being older and wiser, thinking about it, like, I would have had health insurance.
Yeah.
No,
But you would have been a better cook, though.
Yeah.
Because cooks that go to country clubs, I feel like within the corporate structure, there's a lot of guys that are executive chef, but they can't cook.
Right.
They just push you along and move you along, and you just say yes, and then they give you, whatever, $1,000 more a year, and you kind of get caught up, and then before you know it, you're 45, you don't know how to cook, and you are senior executive chef overseeing fucking 18 sites.
Yeah, I mean, like they're so which is a good and a bad thing. Here's the problem with the culinary industry. Like in the culinary industry, there's not a lot of management training, right?
Yeah,
So like.
yeah.
You know, how do you become a sous? Well, you become a sous because you're the most responsible guy there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or you're the last guy, or you're the last guy standing, right?
I've been in some restaurants where it's just because you're the dude that speaks English that you're the sous chef.
Right. So like
Racist ass owners, bro.
They put so you're the sous now. Here's a clipboard. Start doing some management shit, right? Like okay, so place the order with the place the order with the douchey meat guy, right? But there's no training program in how to teach someone how to be a proper manager, right? There's nothing in the culinary industry to date on how teaching chefs how to be good mentors to get good sous chefs, to get good CDCs, to eventually, because like look, at the end of the day, the executive chef is the CEO, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not he or she can cook is almost besides the point, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't expect the CEO of Pepsi to really know how to make a soda, right?
Right.
And as strange as it sounds, I actually don't really expect the executive chef at a steakhouse to even know how to cook a goddamn steak, right? It would be nice, but like there's a lot more complexities going on in a larger restaurant group that needs someone to be able to get the right person in the right seat, right?
100%.
So like are you able to are you able to hire a CDC who's not going to be screaming at the line cooks? Do you have basic fundamental knowledge of Excel so that you could try to do your own food costs and or have enough understanding of different computer programs out there to be able to do your P&Ls through a wide spectrum of properties, right? That is a more important skill for a corporate chef at that point. Right?
Definitely.
And look, I mean, at any given point, like most people who rise to any kind of leadership rank in the culinary world is ill prepared for what they what they need to do. Like the one thing that a lot of chefs rely upon me on is just meat in general, right? Like most, if you think back to your time as a line cook, you didn't do a lot of butchery, right?
Yeah.
Like there was either a butcher did it, or the sous did it, or the exact chef did it. Somebody did it, right?
Yeah.
Because you couldn't be trusted with something so expensive,
Right.
And by the time you ended up at sous, that maybe you do some butchery, but then you are also inundated with a whole shit ton of paperwork that you have to take care of. You have to make sure that the ketchup is stocked. You have to make sure that everybody, the schedule is set, that everyone's all good to go, right? If you're the CDC, like, hey, guess what? You would really love to spend some more time really figuring out how to bone out a beef shoulder, but the walk-in is down now, so you gotta call 3 or 4 Chinese compressor guys and see if they could show up on a Saturday night and fix this shit and fix it right now.
Yeah.
Right.
I always think to myself, because you call these dudes and sometimes they come and you're like, what are you doing on Saturday at 10 p.m. that you could just drop what the fuck you're doing and just come here?
Well, I mean, again, it's the same like me. Like, people ask me all the time for emergency meat drops and whatnot. And, being in the industry as long as I have, I also have a big Rolodex of folks that I send to different restaurants. So I have customers that basically have that problem, that, their compressor blows, their oven dies or whatever, and I'll have someone at their door within 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And, they might not speak English, but just as long as you have cash in hand,
right?
At the end of the day, money talks, right?
Yeah,
they're hustlers. They're there to do a job, and just as long as you're willing to pay, they will show up.
Right. You gotta love that part about money. Shit gets the shit done. I'm telling you.
Yep.
And you'd be surprised. Like people will work for minimum wage, no problem. I mean, I remember working, obviously getting up in the ranks. I made fucking $350 a week for 10 years. Right. Like very little money. But then as you get more money, sometimes I look around and I'm like, how the fuck do you live?
Yeah, I mean, like, so again, that's what if you go back in history versus like now it's never been a better time to be a line cook right now, right? Like, like line cooks in general get paid pretty good. Not fantabulous, sure. But like, still better than what it was back then. But back then, a lot of people who were line cooks, like, people like me or whatnot, we're trying to get somewhere. And I mean, we bought into the deal. The deal said that, like, look, listen, you're going to make dog shit wages until you get to a place of which you'll make slightly better than dog shit wages, but it'll still be dog shit compared to any other program that would of size and scope of what you're going to be managing.
Seriously, 100%.
If you think about the fact that most chefs have to deal with multi-million-dollar budgets, right? Like, I mean, as the meat guy, I have customers that easily spend about $1 million a year with me.
Yeah.
So like, you're managing that budget. You're managing a labor budget that could easily be another $1 million, right? So you're talking about, just on the basic level, a guy who is in charge of $2 million of company money, right? And that guy's being paid $80,000, right? Which doesn't happen in any other industry, right? Like in any other industry where someone is in charge of that much money, that much responsibility, that many human beings, right? They'd be paid a lot more. So
right, you're right. There's definitely a disparity in that, because I was just most recently exec chef at OpenAI, and those fucking engineers right out of college are making $250,000 a year.
Right. So, but it's also supply and demand, right? Like, there's the barrier of entry to becoming exec chef it's not that high, right? Like, to be an exec chef at a big organization, obviously you got to have some chops about you. Yeah. But like, look, there's plenty of the vast majority of the restaurants in New York who has like a person in charge. Yeah. They're kind of there because they survived the longest, right? Like, they started out as a dishwasher, ended up where they're at. But fundamentally, the cooking world is a world of people who didn't have a lot of means, right? They didn't want to go to school. They didn't want to like compete at the highest levels to get engineering degrees, chemistry degrees, computer degrees and whatnot. So you're talking about a lot of people that you're competing against. Now, obviously, the cream rises to the top. So like you have chefs that are working at top restaurants who make top money, but they have a skill set that they have to like almost require a very deep level of discipline to get them there, right? Because like there's not a lot of folks who look at what restaurants do as an industry, right? A lot of it's a lot of restaurant jobs are just dead end jobs.
Very
right?
true.
Like you're not, you could earn pretty good as a line cook for a while until your knee gives out, until your shoulder wears down, until you just simply can't stand anymore, and then, well, the same amount of time that you invested in that job, it's not really paying off, right? Like
no, not at all.
Your equivalent guy working as an auditor in Ernst & Young, within that same duration, he or she's going to end up as a manager, as a director, as a whatever, right? And making significantly more money.
What, in your eyes, if you could have the power to change that, how do you change that?
Oh, well, the only way it changes is get people to pay more money, right? Like the problem is that fundamentally people don't value what what restaurants do.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that simple. People go into Five Guys. And the number one complaint that people get from Five Guys is that why does it cost so much? Well, that's the wrong reason. That's the wrong thing to ask, right? Because the reason it costs so much is the cost it takes to run the business, right? And no matter how much something costs, somebody thinks you're ripping them off, right? So if you look at restaurants, and we have millions and millions of TikTok videos, Instagram videos, and whatnot. Hey, look at me! I'm going down to Flushing. I got 10 bucks, and I'm eating at 4 places and getting these huge portions and whatnot.
Yeah.
Well, there's some asshole in the back who's making dick wages in order to subsidize you getting dumplings for $2 for a dozen, right? There's the owner or whatever is operating under such razor thin margins that they're bothering me about like shaving 15 cents off per pound off a case of chicken, right? So if people really cared about other human beings, if you really care about having, because everyone says the same shit. It's like, all right, look, restaurant owners are assholes. They're exploiting people. They're not paying living wages and whatnot. Well, they can't. There's no way. Restaurants cannot pay a living wage. The very reason is that people are not willing to pay the restaurants to pay their employees living wages. It's simply not possible, right? Until the consumer public will accept that, like, hey, listen, there's an actual human being smashing this burger for me. Right. They're all that this person would love to someday rise up the ranks, be able to afford a mortgage, right? Until you're willing to say that, well, look, you're still you're still gonna prefer looking at videos saying like, oh my God, I'm getting this amazing burger deal and it's only $7, right? Well, that $7 is not $7 and someone's making money off it. They are, but look at the auxiliary costs that are involved in it, right? That $7 burger means that there's some dude who will never ever afford a mortgage, right? There'll be some dude in there that will always be stuck in that station in life, right? Now you could bitch and moan about the owners being greedy and not paying their people enough, but the owners can only pay people based off how much money they're making, right? Why is Oracle able to pay a college graduate $400,000 to sit around and write a code? Because they can, because they're buying products that will eventually effectively cost them nothing to make, right? Because once they have their fixed costs down, once they have their variable costs all covered, everything else is gravy, right? $400,000 for one human being to work 1 year straight out of college is nothing, right? Because they're making excess profits, right? They're making lots and lots of money off of it. Restaurants are not, right? Even if you have a restaurant that's making 60 million a year, it's still like 7-9% in net profit, if that, right? And that's assuming you have not fucked anything up. That's assuming all your I's are dotted, all your T's are crossed. Even with all that money, you're not making excess profits, right?
Right. People open restaurants every day. There's going to be new restaurants opening and fucking closing in this city, like. Yeah,
part of our existence is to figure out all right, which is why part of one of the things that people always ask all the time. Yeah, how good are these guys at paying, right? Because we get hosed all the time with restaurants closing. Yeah,
how do you deal with that? Do you just take the loss, or is it suing? Is it going after them?
It depends. For the most part, it will be a loss, right? Yeah, because you if a restaurant closes, you're really not able to squeeze blood from a stone, right? And most of us are not not like the big broadliners like Cisco or U.S. Foods or whatnot, which they have personal guarantees and they're able to
Yeah.
issue a marshal's notice, and now you got the marshals breathing down your neck, so you pay your
Oh, Cisco can do that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so well, they have the money to do it, right? Most of us who are independent meat purveyors,
Yeah.
we're small,
Have,
right?
they, have they ever sent the marshals anywhere? Cisco?
Oh yeah, I have. I mean, it's not like they kick down your door or whatnot. They basically serve you a notice. They'll freeze your bank account and pay your nut, right?
Fuck.
Yeah, and I've had plenty of
Cisco's corrupt.
well, it's not even that. It's U.S. Foods. All these guys do the same thing.
Yeah.
And
It's
look,
just being a corporation in the United States. They have benefits to it.
Right.
Because they have so much buying power and money.
right. So they, but but at the end of the day, even Cisco can't just absorb endless losses, right? So all right, they're sending, it sounds mean and nasty that they're sending marshals over, but fundamentally, a business can't continue operating with losses.
Right.
Like, a lot of people have a misunderstanding on how much money that a purveyor makes. A lot if you look at the Cisco bill breakdowns, there's a good chunk of stuff that you're buying from Cisco that they're making absolutely zero on.
Right.
The other, what they'll do is they'll start jacking up things like toilet paper and some of those other things, and
Shit that you need.
yeah, just dollar average it out.
I
right?
do think that the new ordering platforms, that's all analytics that are going to work against restaurants 100%. I feel like you go on there, it's like booking a flight.
Right.
If you search for it and then you go back an hour later, it's $50 more, because they know you want the thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's so that kind of brings it down to this very sad trend that a lot of people are in right now with in terms of food costs, right?
Yeah.
So, for the longest time, chefs have not been very good in terms of food costs, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll just slap things on a menu and let's make it work, right?
Yeah.
So the pendulum swung the other way, where now people are just eyeballing food costs, and their way of doing food costs is, to just kind of scrutinize every single thing they're buying from everybody, and they're just kind of nickeling and diming everybody down there. Which, that's one way of doing it. A better way of doing food costs, the one that I always tell folks, is that look at your product mix, right? Like, look, you're at the end of the day, everyone always talks about margins.
Yeah.
But you don't pay the rent on margins. You pay the rent on net, right? If I gave you a 15% margin on a $7 cheeseburger, it's not gonna. You're like, yeah, you seem like a goddamn champion. You had 14% food costs on that, right? Or I could give you a 50% margins on a piece of dry aged steak that costs $75, right? Well, you just made yourself $75. You just charge $150. I think I'd rather take $75 over whatever 85% of $7 is, right?
Nickel and diming.
So, I mean, people do that to make themselves feel better. Like, okay, look, I got my food margins at X, right? But fundamentally, don't look at the margins. Look at your net. What are you making in your net? Are you getting your product mix well enough that your customers are willing to pay for certain products and get your check average up, right?
Yeah.
Check average is king. Cash is king. Everything else, will come second.
God damn, Tyson. All this is just flowing in your head while you're driving around meat.
Yeah, well, I mean that. Well, look, at the end of the day, anyone could sell you a case of brisket, right? It's not that complicated, right? We're in the box business, right? I'm really no different than an arms dealer, right? Like if I'm a shady arms dealer trying to send some rifles and whatnot down to Africa to get some blood diamonds and whatnot, as shady and movie worthy as it is, their job fundamentally is a logistics business. I'm in the logistics business, right? Like I'm here to get you product when you need it. It just happened to be that I focus on specific things that are harder for people to get. But at the end of the day, it is a logistics business.
Right.
And so, but it's still, I still, just as a chef, has to answer the very, very fundamental question on why should anyone eat your food, right? I have to answer that same question. You know, there's a lot of meat purveyors in New York City. There's a lot of them you've never heard of. There's a lot, they're everywhere. You see their trucks up and down the city, right? Out of all those folks, why would you want to talk to me, right? Like, you know, why would you want to talk to some guy who whose fundamental job is to ask you for money, right? You know, as rosy as the industry might be, you know, it more or less boils down to me sitting down and saying like, hey, listen, I got product. I want you to pay me for that product, and I want you to use me exclusively, right? So in order to answer that question, you know, I have to be more than just simply a meat guy, right? I have to know my stuff better than the next guy. Look, there are days that you would be able to buy brisket cheaper from Cisco, right? It's not that hard because sometimes they're willing to they're overstocked on stuff. They're willing to sell it at a loss, right? It's not that difficult. Why do you still need to buy that brisket from me? The reason why you still want to buy that brisket from me is because I understand your business. I understand what you need to be successful. And I understand that if you give me a call on Saturday, on 4 p.m. at Saturday night, and your compressor goes down, that there will be a Chinese guy who doesn't speak English down in your basement fixing your compressor, right? Because I'm not just simply a person who sells you stuff. I'm also like kind of a consigliere, if you will, right? You know, do you have problems? I'm here to solve. I'm here to solve said problems.
Meet consigliere. Right? How large is your warehouse?
The warehouse is. I mean, I don't know the square footage. Whatnot, but like, you know, so the dry aging room itself is about the size of a big basketball court.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So you know,
how many people working in there?
Inside the warehouse, there's about 20 or so
20.
folks, right?
Got you.
And so, like but you know, that's a lot of what I do is also leveraging other warehouses, right? So, like, you know, for example, getting cut A5 Wagyu products. You know, we're leveraging some other warehouse to do it, right? The warehouse is not gonna, the importer is not gonna talk to you, the restaurant. They want you to talk to someone like me, right? It's the same with the lamb guy, the field guy, and whatnot. They're not interested in dealing with restaurants, right? They're interested in selling to someone who's going to pay, and restaurants are very shitty payers, right? So they'll deal with someone like me. You know, I know their product. I'm a trained butcher. I could cut fairly decently.
Okay. What's the longest you've aged a piece of beef or something?
I sold some 1-year-old tomahawks to a customer last year.
The fuck did that smell like?
It was pretty cheesy.
For sure.
And you know, and the funny thing is that, you know, the way people, the question is always the same. You know, I'll tell people like, hey, listen, I got a 270-day aged like ribeye. Right. You want some? And the question is always the same. It's like, well, how's it taste? Who knows, right? It's you know, it's but at the end of the day, it boils down to what you're offering to your customers, right? Like, you know, does Pappy 22 taste better than Pappy 15? Absolutely not, right? You know, things don't get better as they get older. They get rarer. It's harder for you to get it, right? Now, just because armed with that knowledge, armed with knowing that Pappy 22 does not taste better than Pappy 15, does that diminish your desire to at least try what Pappy 22 tastes like? It doesn't.
No,
right?
It doesn't. No.
You still want to see what it tastes like.
I do.
You want to see. You want to see what time does to that product.
Yeah.
Right. You as a consumer are intrigued because someone is offering you something that nobody else is offering you. Right. So like, okay, should you age a tomahawk for a year? Absolutely not. But that being said, if you offer it and someone and you're transparent with the client. Be like, hey, listen, is this better than a 30-day aged tomahawk? No, but aren't you curious? Absolutely, you're curious, right? Because
I do want to taste that though.
We have expanded in the culinary industry in New York far beyond being just delicious, right? Delicious is no longer enough, right? There are lots of people doing delicious food. A lot of them doing at extraordinarily high level. The level of training for chefs now, with the amount of information available to them, have never been higher, right? Like, it takes the average line cook now a month to acquire the same amount of knowledge it took me a year to pick up. Right. I would have to stage, sit around, peel potatoes, like slowly translate French cookbooks in the same for months to get the same amount of knowledge as some line cook now with an Instagram account.
Do you think that that's a detriment?
No, I do not. I'm not. I think more knowledge, faster knowledge is always better.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, some people say that because you didn't have to make so much effort for it, that it therefore isn't as valuable.
I mean, that might be the case, but again, look, there's always going to be folks in the past who looked at folks in the present who are like, hey, look, things were much better back in my day. Like,
right. No, they're not. No, they're not.
If I could choose to be from back then to being a young line cook now, I would be a young line cook right now, all day, every day. Yeah. Right? Like just just to be able to see the recipes. I mean, just think about it. YouTube was still in its infancy when I was when I was a line cook, right? Now you could see any recipe in full color, no translation needed, right? I had to read fucking French cookbooks just to figure shit out, right? There's dudes in English doing recipes in front of me, showing me step by step. This is what you do. This is what this is what the dish is supposed to look like. How did you acquire this knowledge back in the day? You worked for free. You offered to come in at 6:30 in the morning after working a night shift till 1 a.m. Right? Just for the privilege of rolling pasta, of peeling potatoes, just so you could side eye and look at what everybody else is doing to learn and acquire the knowledge that everybody else has. Right? Now you could get all that in a TikTok video. I will take that all day, every day, right? Because I don't know if anyone does romanticize the past in that period. I don't. It sucked, right? Like acquiring knowledge at a snail's pace is kind of retarded. But
can't use the R word anymore, Tyson.
No, yeah.
You're from an older class, so we'll forgive you.
Yeah, special ed.
There you
whatever.
go. Well, shit, Tyson. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah,
man.
Thank you.
Fuck yeah. So how can, I guess people can't find you? You just have to know somebody.
Oh, they could find, if there's anybody who wants to buy meat, feel free to go on Instagram, look for Flesh and Blood Social.
Okay.
And you'll see plenty of dead cows and plenty of Wagyu, plenty of all whatever.
Fuck yeah. You got to, what is your Instagram?
It's at Flesh and Blood Social.
Okay. Oh, it's yours.
Yeah.
Okay, got you. And so, hell yeah, I hope some chefs buy from you from this episode. If not, all good. I thought some of your messages were very informative for young cooks, especially because those are the people that listen to my show. And that's it, baby. Cool. Sucio Talk coming from Sobre Masa Tortilleria out here in Brooklyn. I'm going to get some furniture next time. Or maybe the time after that.
Yeah, keeping it real.
Fuck yeah, baby. That's how it is. It's kind of dusty in here too. I'm like, but we'll get it all sorted out. We finally got the bathroom hooked up. I can't wait till this is in full steam. They're gonna do a little shindig. Nice. So when that happens, I'll invite you over.
Awesome.
All right. Peace out, guys. There we go.
That was fun.
Yeah. Ya tú sabes, mi gente. Nos vemos pronto.